I've been very, very conscious since the moment of Charlie's death not to just revert to my own priors, which is what I think most people are doing right now. Yes, as soon as I saw him shot, especially when we heard the question that he was answering, the first thing I thought was it's a trans activist of some sort. It's somebody acting in some way on behalf of the trans community. And to be honest with you, I still think that's true. I believe, based on this evidence, that's pretty clear. But I've seen everybody I know go to their priors. I've seen whatever. I've heard Tucker and I've heard Candace, and we'll talk a little bit about what Candace is saying today. Go to, is there any sort of state, possibly Israeli involvement? Tucker didn't say that explicitly, but, you can see he might be kicking it around. And she's saying it a little bit closer to explicitly. You see people who are just more conspiratorial in their thinking, and that's fine. Honestly, we've talked about this many times. They've gone to the massive conspiracy, our own government did it. Our own government somehow wanted to get Charlie, and that's online in certain corners, and that his own security shot him, and the video slowed down to show you how his own security guard was in on it, shooting him from the other side. Somehow the magic bullet made it through and around and to the left, even though the guy was on the right. All this stuff. So I think most of what we're seeing right now in the news is people going to their own priors. The left is the right are fascists. They're the evil ones. And so they're the ones who pick up guns and shoot people, and our people are peaceful, which is a lie. And, somebody like me who's been very active in what's happening in the trans community is deeply wrong, kind of goes there first, saying, I suspect them, and so on. So we all have to check our own biases and stay fact-based, no matter where the facts lead us, which is very possible if you're aware of your own priors and you take the facts as they come in. But the left, I submit to you, is not willing to do that. It is not willing to do that. It is not going to accept, even if this guy comes out at this arraignment today or his first appearance today and says, I did it for the trannies, or I did it for Israel, or whatever, you pick it, whatever, any number that's going around now. The left will not accept that. They will only go with the pre-existing narrative. I don't know why. They're divorced from reality. They can't accept what their side is doing. You tell me.
There's so much to unpack here. I mean, there's, the frustration that I had when everything, Occam's razor, as we've mentioned a couple of times, was so clear that Charlie Kirk, of all people, was gunned down in the middle of one of his debate sessions with students at a university. Pretty obvious what's going on here. I mean, there's a narrow band of people that could be groypers or something. But yet, because there's, one person out of all of them, you have Heather Cox Richardson, the biggest Substacker and apparently a professor of some repute, which she should lose any of that repute for the stuff that I've been reading by her. And, the bullet casing stuff, well, that wasn't true. We've got to take that story back. Somebody told The Guardian that he'd gone very far left. And then The Guardian said, well, we don't know if that's true. We're actually going to append something. Everyone's being very nervous about this, about his politics. And then you think back to Jared Loughner, the psychotic loser who shot Gabby Giffords. And we saw Paul Krugman the next day, trying to tie this to Republicans, people trying to tie it to Sarah Palin. And then you saw his what he wrote about this before he did it. And it was a bunch of babble about numerology. And how grammar was an evil conspiracy.
Exactly.
Grammar, not liberals, not, grammar. And so they were very happy to jump to those conclusions then. And now it's everybody urging calm and reflection. One thing I want to say about sticking to facts. I mean, we absolutely have to do that. And I see so many people like you, Megyn, who are not doing that and are getting out in front of themselves to try to make some sort of political point. There's a problem, though, about the way that people actually deal with facts and deal with things that are undeniably true. So you have people saying, well, what about? The whataboutism comes in when we're trying to figure out who is more violent, the left or the right, which is a mug's game. It's a stupid idea. It's a stupid game because there is something in this that is important, but no one is paying attention to it. They're trying to figure out on a scorecard. I've seen many of these scorecards. The actual case here is not that there is a scorecard. It's how your side, it's how the people in your, retinue, how they deal with it and how they internalize violence. And what I mean by this is right close to where I am right now. I just saw a news story pop up that a judge dismissed 2 charges in the Luigi Mangione case. One of them, I think,
terrorism charges.
Yeah. The second story I saw related to that was a chorus of cheers from people out in front of the courtroom, 40-odd people who were holding signs and standing for Luigi. I just imagine if there was, I don't love playing this game, but I just imagine if there was some sort of right-wing lunatic killer and there was 50 people out in front of the courtroom in New York City cheering that person, having lesser charges. You would never hear the end of it. And if I can do one very quick thing, and I'm just thinking about this morning, because I was coming in to the city on the subway, and I'd mentioned this the other day, the institutional acceptance of violence on the left. And I'm sorry, I'm tired of being ecumenical about this. Mm-hmm. There is no people in universities who committed right-wing terrorism who now have university jobs or are treated with respect. Mm-hmm. And I went down the list.
That's right. Nor does the right ever stop a speaker from coming to a college campus.
And if they did, we would all denounce it, I hope. I mean, I know that you would, Megyn. Yeah. I know all 3 of us would do it. But I was just thinking of the people because I'm obsessed with this stuff and I have mental health issues, Megyn. And so I know all these people, these mad terrorists from the 1960s who I've written endlessly about. And I was trying to think of the people who have been charged with crimes, terrorism crimes, been in front of a court because of this, who have advocated violence and in a lot of cases participated in violence, and in some cases been convicted of murder.
Kathy Boudin.
Kathy Boudin, who was at NYU and Columbia, she was convicted of murder.
Bill Ayers.
Bill Ayers at University of Illinois, Bernardine Dohrn, Northwestern. I was writing them down. Eleanor Stein, member of the Weather Underground, SUNY Albany, Susan Rosenberg, John Jay College and Hamilton College, Judith Clark at CUNY, Kathy Boudin, Jamal Josephs at Columbia University, Erica Huggins at California State, Howard Mochtinger, University of North Carolina. The list goes on. All of those people were involved in terrorism. I mean, this is not a controversial position I'm taking here.
Mm-hmm. No,
people have been
factual.
Have been either convicted or were part of the sort of organizing committee of the Weather Underground. Not only did we allow them back into society, like, look, you served your time or you were found innocent. I don't want to put people in a corner forever. Most of these people didn't go back to their views and say these were wrong. They got university teaching jobs. And I ask every listener of the show, if you think that it's a small proportion of people that are celebrating or justifying Charlie Kirk's murder, I suspect it probably is small, but it's way too big. Mm-hmm. Those are the same, you can have exactly those 2 sentiments at the same time. And just think of anyone that you know on social media who has said something, friend of a friend who sent you a screenshot of one of their friends. I have had so much of this, and none of these people are in the world that we live in, the world of politics. And it's astonishing to me, much like the Luigi Mangione thing, how many people are saying, well, it's bad, but that is a bad place to be. And I want everyone to walk away from politics for a second, because you start thinking, well, what did Charlie Kirk think about trans rights and affirmative action? You know, you should be my daughter, who's 14 years old and just the most fantastic person on earth. She found out about this and texted me. And you know what her text was? He had 2 kids. That's what she said. And that's the right thing to think. She couldn't imagine, like, their father was taken away. Because she has no politics in her. She's 14, she doesn't think about politics. So she thinks about the natural thing that we should think about is someone being gunned down and, you know, there's so many horrors of it, but taking away a father from their kids who will, you know, don't have a father growing up. I mean, it's so horrifying to me. And I thought when my daughter sent me that text message, I was like, yeah, we need to get back to that. We need to get back to being
out of the mouths of babes.
15-year-old and get out of the politics and just think of the consequences of this disgusting person's disgusting actions.
I just wanted to say 2 factual things on what you said. Yes, there was that controversy about the bullet casing where people say, oh, well, that fell apart. No, it did not fall apart. The first bullet, the bullet casing on the bullet that hit Charlie read notices bulges OWO, which is a furry meme. It's a meme from furry culture, which is very closely linked to the trans community. And who does it turn out his boyfriend is? A furry/trans person. And the shooter himself is linked to a furry website. He registered on this furry website. So it's very linked. I mean, don't believe me? Go ahead, look at it online. That furry culture and that trans culture are two sides of the same coin. So it did not fall apart. In fact, if anything, it only came into full flower once we learned about the boyfriend. Not for nothing, but there are unconfirmed reports now that there was a second boyfriend who was also much like the first one. We'll see whether that's true or not. But clearly this man, the shooter, and his boyfriend were extremely tied to the trans community. And according to what I read from Aesthetica and the Washington Free Beacon, also to some sort of group online that was predicting this murder. So the FBI is looking into all that. And then secondly, you mentioned the friend interview to The Guardian, which then The Guardian stood down on. The friend of the shooter was allegedly saying he went very left in recent years. And this is a left-wing publication, so the left didn't know what to do with that. Like, why would they? You can see why National Review would write that, but why would The Guardian say that if it weren't true? So it was a problematic report for these lefties. And then The Guardian stood down on the report saying, oh, we're not sure. And then all the left used that too to say, oh, see, he wasn't a lefty, totally ignoring that the Utah governor has repeatedly said, and the FBI has now repeatedly said on the record, on camera, not anonymously, not leaked, that he had been infected by far left ideology, by left-wing ideology. That is what they both said. They won't acknowledge it. Instead, here's CBS Evening News' John Dickinson just the other night, on Monday, last night.
5 days after Charlie Kirk's murder, the shooter's motive remains elusive. No writings left behind, vague secondhand testimony. That uncertainty and the risk of drawing sweeping conclusions suggests the murder may share similarities with recent violence not driven by an obvious political ideology. The FBI recently recognized a new category, nihilistic violent extremism.
What is he talking about?
Very selective skepticism. Again, I'm in favor of let's hold off, wait for the evidence to come in, and try hard not to root for what category the shooter belongs to. I think that we all should do more of that. So maybe the first half of a sentence could be read like that. But then the second half of a sentence is, it suggests this explanation over here.
And where was the TikTok of evidence, Matt? Okay, if you're going to say we don't know what the motive is, you must offer the evidence we do have. There were no writings? Yes, there fucking were. There were writings. There were writings on the bullet casings, you absolute asshole. There were writings, and they couldn't have been more tied intimately to the actual murder. This is insanity to say that. And there might by the way, there doesn't have to be writings anyway. But if there are, and then you look at the man's lifestyle and they back up everything that was written on the bullets, it seems like it might be worth leading with, John, rather than, it might be, it's just a mystery. And by the way, then we saw Jessica Tarlov try to do that shit on Fox News' The Five, as she both sidesed the violence issue. And it was a great response from Greg Gutfeld that is very satisfying to watch. I encourage people to watch the whole thing online, because he spoke for all of us in his firing back at her and her shutting that shit down. Here it is.
Why is only this happening on the left and not the right? That's all we need to know.
What about
There's absolutely no cognitive...
What about Melissa Hortman that we just talked about?
You want to talk about Melissa Hortman? Did you know her name before it happened? None of us did. None of us were spending every single day talking about Mrs. Hortman. I never heard of her until after she died.
She doesn't matter?
Don't play that bullshit with me. You know what I'm saying is there was no demonization, amplification about that woman before she died. It was a specific crime against her by somebody who knew her. The both sides argument not only doesn't fly, we don't care. We don't care about your both sides argument. That shit is dead.
All that I was saying is could we have all of the information before you just say they did this? Because that is a broad brush to paint with this. And this kid
Let's have a conversation.
No.
Charlie had a conversation. He got shot. They built this thing up. We're dealing with it. We're going to act. We don't care what the whataboutism is anymore. That shit's dead.
I couldn't agree more. I just feel like She's acting like it's a total mystery. She's pulling the John Dickinson thing, where it's like, gee, just such a mystery. Oh, and by the way, both sides do political violence. They keep raising this House Speaker in Minnesota, and it is infuriating. First of all, Gutfeld is exactly right. She wasn't killed because there were universal attacks by the right on her, stirring up the national animus against her. No, nobody knew her name. She wasn't some star in Minnesota either, where it was like, oh, every negative article about this House Speaker. That's not at all what was happening there. And secondly, the guy who killed her, the psycho, remember, who broke into her home and was wearing the mask, was a psycho. The guy was a psycho. He had clearly lost his mind. You can attribute it to political violence. Like, yes, he targeted somebody who was in politics, but he was a nutcase. So far, I've seen no evidence that this particular 22-year-old was a nutcase in the truest sense of that word, nor the guy who shot Trump and got shot himself in Butler, Pennsylvania, for that matter. Now, they may have been 20-something-year-old men who had a break, but the evidence on that is out. Mm-hmm. But to raise the speaker in Minneapolis, or Minnesota, like she is in any way comparable to Charlie Kirk, is a lie. The left is lying. It is their side that does political violence. And because you might be able to find one random right-wing example, okay, Paul Pelosi was attacked. That wasn't a Republican attacking Paul Pelosi. Are you kidding me? The guy, everything around him, he was with the pride flag and the BLM, and he was a nut too. But don't tell me he was some Republican doing Republican violence against her husband because they're Democrats. The things they pluck are inapposite, as we would say in our legal briefs. They don't fit. They're off point. And while they do that shit, they don't acknowledge we had arguably three presidential assassination attempts on our guy as he was inching toward the polls before November of 2024. And his most prominent supporter, there's not a more prominent Trump surrogate than Charlie Kirk, was just gunned down in the prime of his life. Deal with that.
Imagine the situation if someone shot Barack Obama, Joe Biden in the ear, and then not long after shot one of his biggest supporters or one of their biggest supporters in the neck and killed them. I think that we would be having a conversation about the epidemic of political violence. Right now, what we're having is, well, what about this? And, it doesn't, look, we're a nation of 340 million people. You can have a time in which 10 people who are nominally on the right, or the left, go out and do terrible things. Kill people, shoot people, burn things down, whatever it might be. That's not the interesting thing. I'm sorry, it's just not as far as trends go. The thing that bothers me is my daughter also said to me, she's like, it's going to be Luigi Mangione all over again. This is the 14-year-old.
Very smart girl. This is the one that's my fan, isn't it? Yeah, I like this.
She does. She sends me clips. And I was like, could you please block Megyn? You're getting radicalized. This is a little too much. You go to school in New York City.
She's in good hands. I got her.
She's in very good hands. But the thing about this is that, again, it doesn't really matter to me if we're keeping this scorecard. It matters on how people react to it. If there is, for instance, a bunch of people who say, you know what, Mangione, maybe you shouldn't kill people, but do you know what the healthcare companies do? It's like this kind of reaction is
Remember when you guys were on right after that happened and we refused to have that conversation right now? We was like, you could have a conversation about healthcare and insurance and all that. It's totally inappropriate to have it right now. When inflation jumps, when you hear the national debt is over $37 trillion, do you ever think maybe now would be a good time to buy some gold? Well, you'd be right. Whether as a hedge against inflation, peace of mind during global instability, or just for sensible diversification, Birch Gold Group believes every American should own physical gold. And so they created something special. Until September 30th, if you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 in free metals on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, request an info kit right now. Just text MK to 989898. Plus, Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. And you're still eligible for a rebate in free metals of up to 10 grand. So make right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate up to $10,000 when you buy before September 30th. Text MK to the number 989898 to claim your eligibility and get your free info kit. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.